all can hear me and y'all are doing well. I see you've got quite a few signed on right now. Pretty excited about that. Grateful for your presence on this, what I hope is a beautiful Thursday evening for you. Here in Columbus, it is rainy and dreary and has been all day. In fact, it's been quite a crazy day. So real quick, if you guys wouldn't mind, in the chat, if you will please let us know where you're from, where you're coming from right now, wherever your location is. I'd love to be able to see that, know, and be able to connect with you. If you're watching this on a replay later, just type in replay and then also add where you're from, where you're tuning in from. I know we have people who are going to be joining us through the weeks. Some have said they couldn't be here tonight, so they're going to join in on other times. And even this format, as I explain it a little bit, I'll let you know how we're going to do some of this. So you may have noticed I just dropped in the chat a minute ago a link that you can use for Ecamm that gives us live access to all your comments and thoughts and being able to add those on there. And so they can actually pop up along the screen here. And so if you'll want to grant us that access, I'll make sure that we do that again. In fact, I may post it one more time. And so that way, hopefully that will show up and you guys can be able to see it. If not, I'll get it up there next time, make sure we get all those things taken care of. But it is so wonderful to be here finally. This has been a long time coming. I've been planning this for quite a while, wanting to do something like this. And it's just, I haven't had the time, but now it's just one of those things where I'm so excited about it, so excited about diving into all these different topics, all these different things. And I cannot tell you how grateful I am for your presence. So there's people coming in from all over. You may come and go. Like I said, it's kind of an informal live production, but at the same time, it is meant to be a discussion where you could add your thoughts, give us your comments along the way. We'd love to have those. And in future weeks, I'll actually invite some of you on to join me on screen at different times, and so that we have the ability to do that. But one of the things I've learned about online classes or studies is people they have Zoom fatigue. And so they don't want to be on camera. They just kind of want to hide away, be able to listen or do something. Sometimes you just want to be able to have your laptop on your lap when you're wearing your PJs at home, but you still want to engage with something, but you're worried about, I don't really want to have to get dressed for this. I don't really want to have to get set up for that. And I get that. So we did it this format. But at the same time, there may be times where I'd love to bring some of you guys on to have some discussions, to spend some time. And so we will have that ability to do that through our video program. And I'm very, very excited about that. So everyone can say hi also to Jane. Jane's in the chat there. She's helping us out. So please, if you've got any questions along the way, I may not see all of the comments along the way. And so she will let me know if there's anything I've missed. And at times I will jump in and see what I'm missing when it comes to the comments and see how we can add to that or something that you may have brought to light that is just a fantastic thing. And I definitely want to add that. So as we kind of kick off, I've got a couple of things I just want to share with you real quick. So I am going to move around at times in these different places. The first thing I'll note is welcome to the very beginning of what we are, which is this rabbit hole study. And I'm so incredibly grateful to have you here with me tonight. I am in our what we call the HQ, our headquarters for the Buckeyes for Christ on campus at the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. And so wherever you're from, that's where we are. It is not snowing currently, but I think it'll be snowing by the time I'm on my way home later on tonight. But this is our office. If you're ever in the area, come by and see us. Spend some time with us. I'd love to sit down with you and actually have some conversations. This is where I operate out of most days. And I'm very, very excited about just the program we've got here, the students we've got involved. It's just a fantastic program, really reaching out to the campus of 65,000 plus students here in Columbus, Ohio. And we are a part of the ministry of the Church of Christ on Fishinger Road. And they're just a fantastic congregation. Love being part of this family here that we moved up here about 9 months ago to join in on this new work, this new beginning. So the rabbit hole, and I need to mention this. Some of you know instantly because it's almost a colloquialism that we use, the rabbit hole. It goes kind of back in history, and it's not just Lewis Carroll. It's used in a lot of other books along the way. But a few years ago, I was at the Story Conference, and the Story Conference in Nashville, working backstage, and I had opportunity to, the theme for that year was All the Best Ones Are. And it was based off of Lewis Carroll's, the concept of Alice in Wonderland. At the end of the book, she turns to her grandfather and says, "Grandpa, have I gone crazy?" And he says, "Yes, you're bonkers. You're completely nuts. But let me tell you a secret, all the best ones are." And one of the things that we really kind of brought out about that whole entire premise is this idea of what it means to seek, to be inquisitive, to seek curiosity and to reawaken wonder and do all these different things. And so, as we kick off this study, and as I was thinking about what it meant to go down the rabbit hole, to chase these different items and these topics and the rest, really what I couldn't help but start off with, really the beginning, which is we kind of have to reawaken wonder and reawaken curiosity amongst ourselves. Because if I can be honest with you, well, we live in a world of cynics, a world of cynicism. And the last couple of years, and it's not just been the last couple of years, it's easy just to throw that out there because of politics and COVID and all these other things and just say, well, these last couple of years have just been, they've made cynics of us all. The reality is that we've constantly questioned at time all of the things and the wonders that we have in the world and the beauty of curiosity and learning new things. Instead, it's just been easy to, throw up a little hashtag and tweet something out and the rest and just think our entire existence is based off of those very premises. That our theology at times has become almost like a bumper sticker theology. And boy, is that a dangerous way to live. A bumper sticker theology where everything can just be boiled down to 140 characters, now 280, possibly something longer than that. And that's how you live. And so it's so easy to become cynical when you see all these things. So where do we start? Where do we start when we talk about these things? Because we're going to be diving in quite a few things. In fact, here's some of the topics that we'll be going through in these coming weeks. Critical race theory, intersectionality, cults, gender identity, wisdom, angels, demons, politics, climate change, racism, worldview, Marxism, Jesus, and more. In fact, I dare say you're going to find a lot of Jesus in all of those along the way. But ultimately, why are we doing this? And why must we start off at the very beginning with this concept of wonder, or reawakening wonder and curiosity? Because we have grown at times not just cynical, but I dare say old. We've grown old in the way that we think and the way that we talk. We've just, I know everything I need to know. I can just make assumptions on everything. It's either something that I already knew or something along the way, or it's something that candidly is just a conspiracy theory and I don't care anymore. Instead of going, no, okay, I don't know something about this. This is a fantastic opportunity for me to dive deeper, to learn more, to see what else is there. And that's what really has to happen. How do we learn more? How do we become truly childlike in our curiosity once again about all the things the world has to offer? Now, you may look at that and you go, how in the world do you do that with critical race theory? How in the world do you do that with intersectionality? It's, for one, you just got to dive down the rabbit hole. And the other side of it is this. You have to accept that there's things you don't know, things you don't understand, and be okay with that. And be okay with the idea that, I might have some things I need to learn. I might have some things that I really need to seek out more. In fact, maybe I shouldn't just assume because I read one article about something that I know everything that has to happen with that topic. So how do we do that? How do we dive into all these things? Well, we've got quite a few other things, but I also want to note this. In the group that you've been invited to, and Jane and I yesterday were talking about this. Do we do this live on Zoom? Do we do it live in this format? And we chose to do it live in this format for a couple of reasons. One, it provides this private, it's semi-private. People can be invited in. In fact, I welcome you to invite as many people as you'd like to join us each week, or they can watch the replays after. That's 100% fine. And be part of this little community. And beyond that, also, where we're going to share articles and here's some things we've been reading. And you may find something that you go, actually, no, we talked about that last week. And here's what I was reading this week. What do you think about this? And engage with others on different topics. In fact, I encourage that. I welcome that. I'd love to know, even if you might disagree. You might say, have you thought about this? Or have you thought about this? I love that. In fact, that's the curiosity we're talking about. So please feel free to share in this group articles and questions and thoughts and conversation starters throughout the week, and we will do the same. And so I'm so excited about that because I hope that you can learn from my own study and from other studies, but also that I can learn from you and that we can gather together on this journey. So I hope you don't think it's just going to be a talking head, except for a lot of times there will be a talking head, but hopefully there'll be two at times or others that they will join us. But beyond that, I just hope you feel like you can engage with this. You can watch this later. I love that there are those of you that are live, that you can watch this right now, type in questions, comments, but it's also okay to watch it later or to rewatch it and then add other comments along the way. So that's just a fantastic thing. So that's where we kind of pick off from there and pick up and run with it from there. One of my favorite quotes comes from Socrates, which says, "Wonder is the beginning of wisdom." Wonder is the beginning of wisdom. As a child, I remember the first time I would see magic tricks or things along the way, and I'm blessed to call a good friend of mine, Harris III, is a master illusionist, and so I see a lot of his illusions and his tricks that he does. And in fact, one of my key things I've tried for years, as I've knowing him for 12 years now, is I never ask him what they are because I just like not knowing. I know that's a trick, I know it's an illusion, but at the same time, it's the wonder that kind of reawakens and goes, oh, that's really neat. I wonder how that worked, or I wonder how that happened. But even just the moment itself are beautiful moments that we miss. Children experience this all the time for the first time. Yesterday on my way home, I picked up, or actually it was 2 days ago, I picked up on my way home a Happy Meal for my daughter who had been sick, and she's 4, and they've been collecting all the Disney, or it's not Disney, it's the Mario from the Mario Brothers type thing from McDonald's, and she ended up getting Princess Peach, and you would have thought it was Christmas morning all over again because it was the one she wanted. And those little beautiful moments of wonder are so fascinating to me, and how to reawaken that even within us, because as we've often grown older, we've become just more cynical and missed out on those little moments of wonder. So wonder is the beginning of wisdom. And let me ask you that. What do you think of that? Because wonder, to me, inspires thought, inspires something more beyond just where we are in the very moment. It means that there may be something else I don't know. And that is why wonder is the beginning of wisdom. G.K. Chesterton also notes this: because children have abounding vitality, because they are in spirit fierce and free, therefore they want things repeated and unchanged. They always say, do it again, and the grown-up person does it again until he is nearly dead. For grown-up people are not strong enough to exult in monotony, but perhaps God is strong enough to exult in monotony. It is possible that God says every morning, do it again to the sun, and every evening, do it again to the moon. It may not be automatic necessity that makes all daisies alike. It may be that God makes every daisy separately, but has never got tired of making them. It may be that he has the eternal appetite of infancy, for we have sinned and grown old, and our Father is younger than we. Now, I love that very premise because I think it speaks to something that I experienced quite a few years ago that I want to share with you. In fact, it was for lack of a better words, an experience that I had when I was living in China. And so I wrote it down a while back, and I want to share it with you. And in fact, I often call it a story time. And so this is a little bit of a story time. A few years back, I moved to China to work with some local believers while also doing one of the things I love most, which is teaching. So I was a foreign expert at a university in a town nobody had ever heard of until the pandemic, called Wuhan, China. You see, my time in China was a wonderful one. I truly loved it. I love being in the East. I still miss the food. I still miss the moments that I had with those brothers and sisters in Christ. It was fantastic. They helped me grow as a person and as a Christian and as a man. And I had the blessing of meeting thousands of students, many of them in classrooms and others on the streets. They were an incredibly friendly bunch, and I was never at a loss for a conversation or a smiling, awkward stare. And if I'm being at all honest, millions of Chinese stared at me on a daily basis, and it was a daily basis. I don't mean that figuratively, I mean literally. Living in a city of 13 million people, when you walk around, and I was one of 40 foreigners in the city at the time, you tend to stand out. But the story I most want to share is one I've shared before in other contexts, but this one for us here is probably one of the greatest life lessons I ever had. You see, when I landed in China on a beautiful fall day, I was amazed at how far out in the middle of nowhere the airport was from the city. It was like a good 45 minutes away, 45-minute drive to the city that I had supposedly just drove into, but I wasn't actually in the city. The university was there to pick me up in a small minivan, and I soon found myself in the company of strangers in a foreign land, which is not unusual for me, that I had never been before. This was my only interaction with anyone on that first day, or so I thought. Once we arrived at my apartment on campus, I started kind of unpacking, getting ready for my meeting with the school officials the next day. And this meeting would be an informative one that would kind of spell out everything that was ahead of me as a new foreign expert in this land. And not knowing what to expect, I was going over my contract and what I might be asked to teach, and how many hours a week I would find myself in the company of students, and what my schedule would look like, and kind of what this new role would be. And I have to say I was a bit worried because I had heard that the universities sometimes tried to push the foreign teachers a little bit harder than what they would push other teachers. And so trying to decipher a contract that had been translated from Chinese to English left me with more questions than answers. But alas, at around 4:30 in the morning, I had just fallen asleep just a little while earlier, about 2 hours earlier, just because of the time change and everything. I had this knock on my door, and it was a weird one for sure because it was like 4:30 in the morning. You see, I didn't know anyone, not really, in the entire country. And I met the guy who drove me, we called him the Y-Bond that had drove me there, but I didn't actually know him, nor was I expecting anyone. And in my mind, I remember thinking, who could this be? I don't know a soul in this entire country. Now, that's a weird thing to say when there's billions of people in this country. And yet, alas, again, a knock on my door. And so I got up from my couch, and after I'd fallen asleep there, I moved towards the door and slowly unlocked and opened it. And there she was, this very small, tiny Chinese girl, probably about 4'11". My guess at that moment was that she was probably in her early 20s, but she also looked 12. And so I couldn't really tell one way or the other. And she stood there with her head bowed kind of low, and this tiny little Chinese girl stood in my doorway holding a tiny piece of paper out with her head bowed low, just kind of holding it up in my direction as if she was kind of begging me to take it. And she kept on kind of doing this with her hands. And I remember thinking, why in the world is she standing in my door? And I don't speak Chinese, and I didn't know where to begin. And so I kind of just stuttered and did the international sign of, because she handed me this little note. When I looked at it, there was Chinese characters. Well, I didn't speak Chinese, and so I didn't know what in the world what was going on. And so I kind of did the same thing again where I went, and she looked up really quickly and kind of went like this. And so I flipped it over and I saw English, and I was like, yes. And candidly, my joy was a little short-lived because I read the translation and my heart kind of sank because it said, "What is God?" And to be honest, I was just astounded. It didn't say which God is right and which religion is best and which denomination is better. 3 simple words. What is God? And I read it again and again, and I was suddenly very thankful that I didn't speak Chinese in that moment because I didn't really know where to begin. Now I was 22, and I had just finished a degree in Bible, and I knew a lot of things, but candidly, this question just kind of overwhelmed me in the moment. And I don't know if it was jet lag or something else, but it was just a lot to take in. And I had prepared for a lot of different theological questions and was well-versed in debate and apologetics, but the simple question threw me for a loop. The idea that one would grow up in a culture where the very concept of God is not known absolutely blew my mind. And I looked at her and I wrote down the next day's date and note and kind of motioned her to come back. And she smiled and thanked me and walked away. I hoped, with some hope, that there would be something more. And I sat there for a while in my apartment, not really worrying anymore about my classes or the hours I was going to teach or whether they would overwork me in some way. Instead, I sat there and rolled the question around in my mind over and over again. What is God? I worried about what I was going to say, whether I could get into trouble with the local authorities, if this was a trap, how do I explain it, and so much more. I stressed, I prayed, I read, I searched, and then candidly, there was just something that happened out of nowhere. A thought went through my mind that allowed me to fall into a deep sleep like I'd never had before, and what I realized was this. She asked the right question. And it was such a beautiful question. It was a question filled with hope and awe. It was like a seeking spirit, a desire, a want, a longing. She asked the right question and then left with a smile. And she left the door with hope. And in a world filled with questions, learning to ask the right one is often become a lost art. You see, we are so easily distracted by religious concepts and ethereal ideas that we become masters of asking all the wrong questions. What's worse is that by default, we have also then become masters of answering questions that no one's asking. If you look at our topics that we're going through right now, that we're going to be diving into, can we just be honest with the fact that, well, some of us have grown old and we don't know anymore the questions, and we get tired of the same old questions, and we're answering questions nobody's asking. And then the real questions that people are actually asking, the things that people are screaming out to the world, we're oblivious to. We miss them. In fact, if I were just to go back to those couple of questions about these topics that are coming up, you could look at these and go, oh, these are just topics, cultural issues and things that people want to talk about. But I don't want you to miss the fact that what's really happening here is that people are talking about who they are, how they view themselves, how they're defined, how they define themselves. They're talking about the spiritual world. They're talking about the things that define their ability to live freely or not. They're talking about whether or not the world is going to end. These are deep philosophical, theological, very deep questions. And they're rich with people wanting to know true answers. Over and over again, they're desiring for something more. So, why is it that we seem to be so distracted by things that people aren't asking? And I'll give you some examples, and I know some of these. In fact, some of you may kind of feel like I'm stepping on your toes. Can I just be honest? I'm fine with that. I really am. I'm fine with the idea that you might have your toes stepped on, because just as an example, I worship without instruments. Each Sunday, the Lord's Church, we believe, and I believe strongly, that the Lord does not authorize for us to use instruments in worship. And that's 100% where I stand. It's where I've grown up and how I've grown up worshiping, and the rest. I also know that there are others who do, and there may be those even in this group who do. But I can tell you very particularly that most of the people in the world who are dealing with critical race theory, intersectionality, cults, gender identity, they're dealing with whether or not they're dealing with suicidal thoughts and things, the rest, could care less about that in the moment. Yet, so often, that's where we begin. We begin with things about worship, and we begin with things that are doctrinal in nature, and they're important, but we miss the things that are on the hearts of people. Can I just be honest? I feel like we put the cart before the horse a lot of times. In fact, in our worship services and the rest, we speak what I like to call Christianese. We have ways and terminologies that we use in worship that others, if they were coming around, would just be like, what did they just say? One of the examples I often give is that in the first century, the Christians were often kind of viewed as odd, as almost cannibals, because they would eat the body and drink the blood. Now, you and I might know what that is if you're a believer and you've grown up in the church, but others might go, well, that's just ludicrous. Why would they think that? Well, because that was the terminology that was used. So, how do we deal with these different topics? Why do we focus on this? Why need we reawaken, as Chesterton kind of talks about this fact that we've grown old but childlike? Well, I want to share a couple other things with you that I think are very important as we dive into these things. You see, in Matthew 18, verses 1 through 4, you see this. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And calling to him a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, "Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." Now, can we be honest? There's a lot of us, when we've read that and you've grown up with that and the rest, and what you often hear, what we often see and think throughout this whole entire process is this idea of purity. It's this idea of just being innocent in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of truth to that. Children are pure and they're innocent. But you've also met children, and I don't know if you have, but I have, who are not so innocent in their life. And I don't mean sinful. I just mean they're impish, and at times they're mischievous, and they're learning things along the way. So I can't imagine that it's just this inherent thing that all children are always pure, always innocent. I think we could talk about that in a spiritual terminology, but the reality is even the behavior of children is different. And when you see this, whoever humbles himself like a child, this is one of those things that I would like for us to kind of engage with a little bit. You see, I love this story. And the reason I love this story so much is because, like children, I would like for us to notice a difference between being childish and childlike. To be childlike, if you know most children, they're filled with curiosity. They're filled with desiring to know more. In fact, over and over again, their favorite question is, why, again and again and again. And then they find a question and they haven't answered, and they ask another one, and they ask another one. And I love that about them. In fact, my children, I know there are times where, just as all dads, you just get to a point where you go, all right, but you answer the thing the way that everybody always ends up answering it, because I said so. And there's a reality where I do think that God actually uses the same terminology in his word. When we ask questions and he finally keeps pointing and going, no, I've answered that already. It's because I said so. However, the invitation to ask question and to be unafraid of making mistakes and unafraid. And I don't mean sin. I'm not referencing sin. I'm talking about of trying something new. As an example, what we're doing right now. This is different. This is something that hasn't been done, at least not here in this format before. And that's okay. Because somebody might ask, well, what's success? And I'll tell you what success is. Success is faithfulness to God's word. It's never been about the numbers. It's never going to be about the views or all the different things or how many people watch. Instead, it's about faithfulness. Faithfulness to God and his word. Faithfulness to our curiosity and childlike wonder that he sits in within us, that he has placed on us all, that we may be unafraid to try something for his glory's sake, for his name's sake. That's why I love this story, that you must become like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself. You see, the one thing is if when you're unafraid to make mistakes, when you're unafraid to try something new, because there's a natural humility where you can say, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. And you move on quickly instead of constantly worrying about what others might think, what others might say about you, or if there's such a thing as failure when you're seeking to serve God. And I think we as a church have to balance that. We have to make sure that we don't only do things that we know we can succeed at. In fact, there's a danger there, because if we only do things that we can succeed at, I might ask the question, how involved was God in that? If you can do it without asking God to be part of it, or without God being part of how it succeeds, then is it really success at all? So what does it mean to be childlike? What does it mean to seek more than just where you are in the moment? Albert Einstein said, the pursuit of truth and beauty is a sphere of activity in which we are permitted to remain children all our lives. And also in the same light, he says the important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. Never stop growing. Never stop learning. Never stop learning to ask why. Why is this happening? How can we make this better? What can we learn? In fact, there's a beauty in being a perpetual student, a perpetual person who's seeking to learn constantly over and over again. One of my favorite quotes that I just came across recently through a good friend, Harris, as I noted before, says, maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. You see, as children, we start off innocent and pure and wonderful, and then we oftentimes grow old. And instead of growing old, what if we simply matured? What if we matured but still with childlike wonder? What if we stayed childlike, the way Jesus mentions, humble and ready to try something new, humble and ready to try something more than just where we are in this moment, ready to learn, ready to read something that you disagree with, and instead of having to respond in the moment, to sit and go, how should I respond with this? How can I better share the gospel with others through this? What information do I have here that might help me? Because there's beauty in this, and this is something that I wanted to kind of close out this evening with in some ways, because I kind of want to note this really quickly. When you dive into discussions and groups and concepts and thoughts of people from all over the world, the one beauty about being a Christian, and I don't know if you are or not, but I can tell you this, that there is beauty in being a Christian in that your salvation is assured through the grace and cross of Christ. Now, I want to be careful here, because you can learn all these other things, but none of the knowledge in all the world will not save you outside of Jesus Christ. So there's nothing more that you need to know besides Jesus for salvation along the way. Obedience to him through the waters of baptism, that is the road to salvation. But these other things, this concept of maturing beyond just where you were in a childish faith. In fact, if you are still at a point where you're a Christian, but you're just going through the motions and you've stopped learning and it's just rote memorization and the rest, that is a childish faith, where you have not grown and you're not growing, but instead to seek a childlike faith with purity and innocence, but also curiosity and wonder and fearlessness. So don't question your salvation. Don't think you have to know all these things for your salvation. It's not Jesus plus all these things is what will bring you salvation. That comes from Jesus alone. obedience to his word, obedience to the Bible. On the other side, don't stand still. So you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. You see, God created you, knowing you. And then we, living in this broken world, this Genesis 3 world, fallen in our nature, well, we have a tendency to mess it up. We have a tendency to fall short of the glory of God. But it's through his redemption that we go and return back to who we meant to be. And every day we are constantly trying to be like him. So it's actually not actually about us. It's about him. So how do we better represent him each and every day? I would argue in some ways it's through childlike wonder, through childlike curiosity, seeking to know more, seeking to see more and experience more in this world, to be curious about others and their lives, about other cultures and other people, and going across the world and taking the gospel with you in all these different directions. You are meant for more than just to sit and do nothing. God has a purpose and a plan, and that purpose is his purpose. It is to glorify him in all things. But in that, he has made you with talents and abilities, and he seeks that you use those. So, as we dive into these things going forward in these coming weeks, into these very meaty and rich topics, it is my hope that you will be unafraid, fearless, curious, and be amazed at what you might learn and how wonder can open up new thoughts and new ideas for you, and especially better ways to teach the gospel to others through these topics. Now, I do want to say this as we kind of head towards the closing. Some of you, in fact, I had it earlier, somebody asked me, how long is this class? Is it really going to be 2 hours? Is it really going to be a 2-hour study? Sure, yes, no, I don't know. In fact, there will be moments where I'll present things and then I'll step aside and say, what do you have? And I might look and find some comments and some things that we want to share with others along the way. I might bring someone on in the future and spend some time together talking through on the video and the rest. It's what you make of it. In fact, it is my hope that you will look at these opportunities and say, okay, what can I learn? What can I share? What can I give in these moments? And so that's kind of what I wanted to share with you tonight. But before we head off anywhere or go anyplace, I kind of want to check and see if there's any comments and the rest. And so I'm going to jump on and see. We've got people coming in from kind of all over the place. I love it. Wow, that's awesome. Columbus, Ripple, Mississippi, Atlanta, Georgia. That's fantastic. We got people coming in. I know we've got people watching. And I hope you will continue to watch this and watch it on the replay. If you're coming in from the replay later, let us know. And let me know where you're coming from also. We'd love to see that. And if you've got some ideas of other topics that you'd love for us to deal with, maybe it's something that you're dealing with in your culture and your context and where you are, toss it in the comments. Let us know, and we'll add that to our list of discussions. If you've got one in particular, like, man, this is just on my heart, it's something that I feel like I need to know more about, please let me know. Send us a message, post it in the chat, post it in the group thing. Let us know how we can serve you all. I am so grateful for your attendance tonight and for your being here with you. I hope this is of value to you. What I can tell you is next week we're going straight into the deep end of the pool. We're going straight into critical race theory. Now, I know some of you may be looking at that and going, I don't know about that. That's going to be a little crazy. That's nuts. And what I can say is, welcome to the rabbit hole. We're going to go deep in a lot of different discussions, and I've got a lot of presentations on a lot of different things that we're going to be doing, and I'm so excited about that. Candidly, some of it's going to get heavy, and so I'm going to do my best to make it as entertaining as possible, but also utilizing some screens, some things you can take notes on, and some things that might be some quotes that might jump out. And it's my hope that this will be a blessing to you in your context, wherever you may be. And I always hope, and I will close with this, it's my prayer that God will bless you in all you're doing, that you know that we hope to be a resource for you each and every week on Thursday or whenever you watch on the replay. But more than anything, we hope that that these may spur some thoughts, that you may feel encouraged to think not just differently, but to think about some deeper context and deeper topics and how they apply to our world and how we can reach people for Jesus. I'm grateful for you all, and I'm grateful for your time tonight. And I hope to see you soon. If you've got any needs or if we can help you with any way, please let us know. Please invite all you would like to come join us in this group. They can watch the replays, but also they can join us live on Thursday nights. With that in mind, I will see you all next Thursday night. Until then, God bless you. Have a wonderful week.